Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update. Join the only official Telegram channel of RAU'S IAS Study Circle to get relevant material and important updates.
Hello everyone and welcome to Daily News Simplified, your one-stop solution to detailed analysis of current affairs which are published in the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper and are equally relevant for your UPSC preparation. Articles dated 12th of March 2022 are listed on your screen, and the timestamping for these articles are already given in the description box. So let us begin with the first article for the day. This article appeared on page 8th of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper and talks about the importance of nuclear energy in countries like India. The article actually has highlighted important events that has shaped in the last 4 decades and that could determine how India should utilize its policy towards the nuclear energy. Now, India is a developing nation who is aspiring to become an energy leader in the future. Given the falling share of coal production due to environmental concerns, India is looking for alternatives. And one of the alternatives which is long-term and sustainable is the nuclear energy. In this case, it is the nuclear fission energy that India is relying on. However, the article talks about the important negative effects or the negative outcomes that may poses towards India's aspirations of achieving the higher nuclear energy. The authors of the articles have highlighted that India should be aware of the negative repercussions related to the nuclear energy. The article has been highlighted which talks about a fire incident near the Zaporozhye nuclear plant which is situated in Ukraine. Now you must be well aware that Ukraine is at war with Russia, and any kind of incident in and around the nuclear plant will lead to the higher concerns of radiation and death of innocent citizens. And that is the concern that is highlighted across the article, ranging into different paragraphs. Now, from the perspective of UPSC examination, at the prelim stage, it is important for the students to have basic facts and knowledge on the nuclear energy. From the mains perspective, it is ideally desirable in your General Studies Paper 1 Geography for Energy Resources, General Studies Paper 3 under Energy Infrastructure and the Concerns of Environment, and lastly General Studies Paper 4 on the Ethics of Using Nuclear Energy for Power Generation. The content for this article would be very elaborate. It would include the basics mentioned in the article, pros and cons of using the nuclear energy, nuclear power status in India, nuclear power plants located across India, nuclear imports of India, Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act 2010, and the possible way forward for India in the coming years. So let us start with analyzing the basic tenets of this article. Now the article talks about 3 important dimensions: the past failures of nuclear energy, what does the future holds, and what efforts have been taken at national and international stage. As far as past incident is concerned, well, we have the current fire broke out in the Ukraine nuclear power plant. In 2011, we saw the case of Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant which was dismantled, which was destroyed because of tsunami. And then we have the case of 1986 Chernobyl incident in the same country, Ukraine, where hundreds and thousands of people lost their life and there was a high degree of nuclear radiation that still exists. These 3 incidents prove that there is a very high degree of hazardous consequences related to the nuclear energy. As far as future is concerned, well, the International Energy Agency has dubbed the solar energy as the most potential and alternate energy which can act as a king of generating electricity across the world. So international organizations, the NGOs across the world have been in favor of reducing the reliance on the nuclear energy. United States has itself contracted its share in the nuclear energy by 33% in the past 1 decade. Globally, it has reduced from 17% to 10%. India set a target of achieving over 35 gigawatts previously. However, it has still not been able to achieve even the 7 gigawatt potential. All these shows that even at the international level, there might be the case that the leaders do not agree in coming up with a plan to reduce their nuclear power. However, the evidences on ground proves that the popularity of nuclear energy is going in the downward trend. On the other side, the electricity generation from the renewable energy, including the hydropower, solar power, and wind power, is looking towards the light of the future. Now, let us understand what are the pros and cons which are involved in generating the nuclear energy. Well, as you can see, the number of cons attached to the nuclear energy outnumbers the availability of pros for this energy sources. So let us discuss with the pros first. Nuclear energy is far cleaner than the coal energy because it does not have high degree of CO2 and SO2 emission. It also does not releases the harmful chemicals like lead. It is long term, it is reliable and it is sustainable. So it requires one time of investment and it can sustain for over a decade. It is not bounded by the source of fuel. So nuclear energy is not bounded by the location of the resources. Resources may be imported from other countries to produce the energy. We have the case of coal energy where most of the power plants are situated near the coal fields. It has a strategic importance for the security purposes as well. So nations which have been producing the nuclear energy are considered to be more powerful in terms of strategic abilities. It provides ample avenues for the consequent research and development. The material which we utilize for generating the nuclear energy or its waste material can be used for generating the other purposes such as research and development for medical development. It requires one time of investment, so regular installments or regular infusion of money is not required. It can also help in generating the employment in and around its location, and it helps in building the good bilateral as well as the multilateral relations with other nations as well. We have the case of 123 agreement that India signed with the United States. And since then we have seen the strategic relationship between both these countries have been on the upstick. Now, keeping the pros sideline, let us discuss some of the cons this energy has. The first and the foremost is it is subjected to mass degree of radiation or may even cause the mass extinction in and around its location if it is subjected to the accident. It is not environmentally sustainable. High temperature of water, which is released after the production of energy, can kill the biodiversity in the water bodies because high temperature reduces the presence of oxygen. It is very expensive to install. So, one plant can even cost over $1 billion to install. It is subjected to the transfer of technology because India is one such country which have been denied the latest technology because it is not a member to non-proliferation treaty. And as it is not a member of nuclear supply group also, India has been subjected to the limited source of technology transfer and that too the outdated technologies. These plants are also subjected to the social unrest among the citizens. We have the case of Jaitapur in Maharashtra. We also have the case of Kundakulam nuclear power plant, where there was the outrage among the citizens regarding its consequences in the future. It is prone to the national disaster. India has a vast coastline and situating these kind of nuclear energy power plants on the coastal areas will bring more hazardous consequences if there is a strike of cyclones or even tsunamis. They are subjected to cordial international relations. So once the relationship between two countries are good, there might be a good degree of transport of technology as well as the uranium material. But we have seen the case of India-Australia relationship. So Australia for long had denied the transfer of these material from its own origin to India because Australia lacked the level of confidence required for strategic transfer of nuclear material. Nuclear energy is not competitive with the renewable resources. For instance, the wind and the solar energy. As of now, the per unit cost of nuclear power is around 12 to 15 rupees per unit. On the other hand, the energy production per unit in wind and solar energy ranges between 2 to 4 rupees. So there is a quantum decrease as far as per unit energy production is concerned. There is the issue of disposal of nuclear waste material. India is not a country which can jeopardize the extension of nuclear waste material in the open areas. India has a large population, India has a high urbanization, so taking risk of releasing the nuclear waste in the open ground is not desirable. As India does not have dedicated infrastructure, India has been facing this kind of problems in the waste disposal. The next potential is that the enriched uranium is utilized for developing the weapons. Now, India is one such nation which has committed towards the non-proliferation in the past many decades. And this is one of the reasons why India got a waiver in 2008 from Nuclear Supply Group in order to enrich the uranium it has imported. So, whatever nuclear missile India is saying to produce or is to hold is based on India's indigenous technology, India's indigenous uranium. The uranium that India is importing from outside its territory is not at all utilized for the weaponization. However, this is one such concern that has been in the news globally because of the Ukraine or because of the Iran. And then lastly, the World Information Services on Energy has said that the nuclear plant produces about 117 grams of CO2 emission per kilowatt hour. So, the proponent who says that nuclear energy is carbon neutral or produces least amount of carbon are actually wrong. So, nuclear energy is also subjected towards producing the carbon emission to this extent. Hence, all these points, that is pros and cons, can be utilized pretty well in the mains answer writing if the arguments towards these important points are asked. These points can well be utilized even in your ethics paper, where you can use these points to put your arguments in favor or against the nuclear energy. If UPSC puts a question on the nuclear energy in the essay paper, these same points can well be utilized. Let us now move towards what is the current status of nuclear energy in India. The nuclear power generation in India is mostly indigenous. The technology that India is utilizing as of now has large components which are produced in India by India. The reason was simple, that India was denied the transfer of technology for last 4 decades. And because of the ban and the indigenization of these technology, India has uniquely been utilizing the thorium that it has. Well, India has almost 25% of world thorium reserve, as you can see. So because of this criteria, India is utilizing its technology of nuclear fuel cycle to generate the nuclear energy from thorium. However, still India does not install any such nuclear power plant for the utilization of thorium. The utilization of thorium for the generation of nuclear energy is part of three-stage nuclear expansion given by Homi Jahangir Baba. In India, the nuclear energy comes under the supervision and functioning of Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, which is a public sector undertaking. So what we have learned from this is that in India, private sector is not allowed to produce the nuclear power at all. This organization is working under the Department of Atomic Energy that directly comes under the Prime Minister's office. It is responsible for operating, maintaining, installation, as well as implementation of atomic power projects across India based on the Atomic Energy Act of 1962. As of now, India is utilizing 3 kinds of reactors for producing nuclear power. The first one is pressurized heavy water reactor. The second one is boiling water reactor. The third one is water energetic reactor. In this case, BWR and WWER or VVER utilizes light water and enriched uranium. On the other hand, pressurized heavy water utilizes heavy water, which is also called deuterium oxide or DO2. Instead of utilizing the enriched uranium, well, PHWR utilizes the natural uranium. Now moving towards the energy utilization in India. The data which you see belongs to the financial year 2022 that is going to end by March this year. The facts given on your screen are the absolute numbers and not the percentage number. From this, what we have understood that India as of now is producing almost 6.8 gigawatt of nuclear energy. The highest share comes from the thermal, in which coal holds the highest position. It is followed by the renewable energy and then followed by the hydropower. So nuclear energy holds the last position as far as capacity or installed capacity is concerned. The current production of India shows that India is producing almost 6.8 gigawatt of energy, and this energy is being produced by 23 power reactors. India is planning to install 8 other power reactors across the nation to produce 6 more gigawatts of energy. There is no reactor in India which have been shut down by now. India wants to increase its nuclear energy capability to about 22 to 23 gigawatts by 2030. If we go through the entire expansion of India in nuclear energy in the past 5-6 decades, we'll find that till 2008, that is up to this point, India's expansion in the nuclear energy was very cordial. It hardly increased till 3 gigawatt in almost 60 years of its independence. However, after 2008, that is after the NSG waiver, India's expansion in the nuclear energy took a quantum jump, and in the last 10 to 12 years, India has doubled its nuclear power capacity. If we go through the entire map of India's nuclear power reactors or the nuclear power plants, well, these are follows. The localities marked in brown point shows the operating structures and the yellow one shows the potential one or which are under construction. The power plant of Rajasthan is also known by the name of Rawatbhata. Most of these power plants are either located near the water resources or they are located around the coastal areas. The reason being simple that power plants in the nuclear energy requires water to run the turbine. Now coming to the importance of nuclear import by India. As India is not the largest holder of uranium reserves in the world, India does not remains the member of nuclear supply group. So how India can achieve the higher imports is based on the information given on your screen. The top exporter of uranium to India are Canada, US and Australia. All these three are the nuclear supply group members and they have the authority to supply the nuclear material to the other members. However, as India is not a member for the nuclear supply group, there were restrictions which were imposed on India because of its conduction of nuclear tests twice. In 2008, India got a waiver on non-proliferation treaty because of the United States and its support. In 2008, NSG lifted all the trade sanctions of nuclear material against India which was imposed in 1974 after its nuclear test. So now India can utilize the material it has imported to generate energy. However, India has pledged that it will only utilize this material for the peaceful purposes and not for generating power. The important thing that should be noted is that all the countries which are selling the uranium to India are not only member to the NSG but are also signatory to the non-proliferation treaty. There is a condition which is imposed on India that India's establishment or the nuclear power plant are subjected to the safeguards of International Atomic Energy Agency, and India is also subjected to the regular or the periodic inspection of these establishments, so that there is a certainty that India's imported uranium is not utilized for the generation or its enrichment for weaponization. In 2010, a bill was passed or signed in order to bring the civil liability against the nuclear damage. as we know the case of Chernobyl, as we know the case of Fukushima. So India was also looking to bring a civil liability. Civil liability here simply means that what would happen if civilians die because of the nuclear accident. In this case, India tried a separate law to bring a balance between the operator and the civilians. So this bill or this act fixes the liability of nuclear damage and specify the procedure for the compensating of victims. So victims who had died or who would die will get the compensation from the government and the operator. The most controversial point of the bill or the act says that there is no fault liability on the operator and give them right to recourse against a certain persons. It simply means that operator who is operating the nuclear power plant in case of accident may deny or may take the legal battle instead of providing the compensation. The cap or the liability for the operator is 500 crore, which may be below the compensation. And this is the reason why government will pay the rest of the money if the compensation is high. This has remained a bone of contention that why shouldn't operator pay the entire amount? All operators who are operating the nuclear power plant are required to take the insurance, and this was also the concern because the amount of insurance may be higher than the compensation being paid by the operator. The operator or the company or the third party may actually make profit out of insurance because the nuclear damage is less likely to happen. If the nuclear plant is owned by the government, which is the case in India, the entire liability would be borne by the government. This is also a point of contention because all the nuclear power plants in India are borne by the government. This act has the limitation on the producer, generator, or the manufacturer of the nuclear power plant. This has remained a bone of contention in India for the past 1 decade. However, fortunately, India has not been a victim of nuclear damage at all. So, as of now, this act has not been put into practice. Now, coming to the way forward, what should India do? Well, India must prioritize its energy requirements in long term. The highest share should come from the renewable energy, followed by the nuclear energy, and least preference should be given to the coal energy, especially the thermal power, so that India can reduce the greenhouse gases and meet its sustainable development goals. India required a dedicated infrastructure in order to dispose the waste material. India can build the integrated complexes or dedicated zones in order to utilize the waste material for further development and research. India should generate the regular data and share this data with the other stakeholders to generate the confidence among the international community. This will also help India to get a membership in nuclear supplier group. India needs to create a fine balance between the interest of the supplier of the technology and the safety of the citizens in its Civil Liability Damage Act. And lastly, India should gradually shift towards 100% indigenization as far as nuclear energy technology is concerned. So, the conclusion would be that instead of completely disregarding the nuclear energy, India should try to find out the potential ways to utilize the energy without bringing any kind of damage to the environment or to the civilian population. With this entire discussion, now I will leave you with this question to practice. So read this question and try to answer within 250 words. Along with this, I will also put you with this important practice MCQ. Read this question number 1 and try to answer in the comment box. Let us now move to the next article for the day. This article appeared on page 15 of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper, that is business page, and talks about the point that Ukraine has halted half of world's neon production or neon output for chip development. The reason being simple, that is the Russian attack on Ukraine. Now, Ukraine has been known to hold about 70% of world's neon gas production, And once Ukraine will halt this kind of supply of neon across the world, it is going to hit the production of gas industry, the chip industry, advertising industries and many others. Now we will read this article from the perspective of prelim examination, that is as a revision to what you already have studied during your school days. So as far as neon is concerned, well, it is an inert gas and forms a part of group 18 in the periodic table. It is the fifth most abundant element found in the universe. However, on Earth, it only contributes about 18 part per million. That is extremely low. It is a colorless, odorless, tasteless gas and is lighter than air. It is a very non-reactive gas because the outer shell of neon gas is complete. So it will not form any compound with any other element in the periodic table. As you can see, this is the area where neon gas is situated. It is the second gas in the 18 group. Other gases include heliums, argons and others. As it is a non-reactive gas, it is not going to have any reaction with other elements in the periodic table. All this information you must have already studied during your school days to take it more like a revision. Now coming to the uses, which is more important for your prelim examination. Neon gas is used in a high numbers for producing the neon signs for advertising purposes. United States is one of the largest utilizing country for this kind of advertising for its products. It is used for high voltage indicators, switching gears, lightning arresters and even the lasers. It is also used as an important ingredient for cryogenic refrigerations because it has 40 times more refrigerating capacity. It is used in the electronic industry as well for gas-filled electron tubes. And lastly, a mixture of helium and neon is used as a respiration for marine divers during their expedition underwater. Now, with all these prelims related factual information, I leave you with this question to practice. So read this question carefully and try to answer in the comment box. Let us now move to the next article for the day. This article appeared on page 15 of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper and talks about India's free trade agreement with Canada. India is in talks to bring the comprehensive economic partnership agreement with Canada in order to protect its investment as well as expand its trade in services and goods. Because of COVID-19 crisis, the talks with Canada on CEPA were derailed. And now government is trying to revive these talks in order to conclude this agreement ASAP. India and Canada as of now hold $6.5 billion trade in 2001. The reason being that the trade is low is that India's dependence on United States is very high vis-a-vis Canada. The specialization of Canada lies in pharma sector where India also holds the major stake. And this is the basic principle of international trade, that if two countries are producing similar good with the competitive resources and competitive prices, there is very less likelihood to have a better trade between them. So what these countries are doing? They are trying to find out those areas or those products, services and investment where they do not have competitiveness in their own market. Both these countries have been insisting on bringing early progress trade agreement that should be signed as soon as possible. This would be the precursor in bringing this CEPA in the near future. The trade agreement between both these nations would include goods, services, rules of origin, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, technical barriers to trade, as well as the dispute settlement on investment. If this comes into existence, India can get a quantum jump of about $4 billion in trade with Canada in the coming 3-4 years. Now, from the UPSC perspective, it is important for the student to understand what free trade agreement is, what are other forms of economic integration, and how many FTAs India has signed by now. So, we will cover these three important aspects in this article as well.
Well, these are the different forms of economic integration which are practiced across the globe in one form or the other. The first and the most nascent one is your free trade agreement. By the definition, it simply means that there are no tariffs or quotas within the group. Now, group can have two members bilateral, it can be trilateral or can be expanded to many other number of countries. As far as bilateral is concerned, so India already has a free trade agreement, let's say with South Korea or maybe Sri Lanka. When it comes to the larger group, it could be extended up to 7 members or even beyond. The best example is South Asian Free Trade Agreement. Well, the limitation of free trade agreement says that it has negative integration. That is, it only talks about removal of the barriers, not on the promotion of exports. And most of the free trade agreements are signed in order to meet the requirement of World Trade Organization under Article 24. The next form is your custom unions. Well, custom union means common tariff and quotas among the members who are part of the union. Well, custom union simply means having a similar tariff and quota policies within the members and outside the members. This also goes with the same negative integration and requirement under the WTO. Then we have the common markets, on which there are no restrictions of factor movement, and the most important factor being your labor. If two countries are part of common market, let's say India and Nepal are part of common market, then the labor which is working in India can also go and work in Nepal, and the vice versa is also possible. There are no invisible barriers to trade. See, whenever we are moving from one level to the other one, what we are observing that the level of integration is keep on increasing, and each successive level will always have the features of the previous level. So in common market, we will have features of free trade agreement as well as the custom unions. The limitation of common market is that it does not have any positive integration. So there is no policy of promotion. Then we come to the common market in its extended form. In this, services are also included. So a person who is working in a BPO or let's say business process outsourcing in Bangalore can provide services to the United States without any barriers. The best example here is European Union, and it has some positive integration in specific sector policies, let's say IT sector. Well, India and European Union are in talks to bring bilateral trade agreement in order to promote the services across the border. The next stage comes the economic and monetary union. In this, we have a common market with some degree of harmonization of economic policy, the common currency and the monetary system. To your recollection, the common currency among different countries, if you can come up with an example, the best example would be the euro used by the European Union. It is a common currency used by the different nations. So they have common currencies and in fact the monetary policy. So if one country go into the recession crisis, all other members come up with the monetary plan to revive the sick economy. They also have a European Central Bank. This is the best advantage because in order to have a common monetary policy, you require a common central bank. They have similar policies on inflation and budget targets, and they have large number of positive integration in their policy. The last one and the top level of policy formulation comes from the complete economic integration. In this, we have monetary, fiscal, social, and counter-cyclical policy. It has policies which are supranational, which means it goes beyond a nation. So there will be a central authority which will decide on monetary and fiscal policy. This kind of integration is very hard to make because of this criteria, that is the fiscal policy. Well, fiscal policy, which include taxation, subsidies and government expenditure, differ from nation to nation. And this is one of the reasons, despite having best of their efforts, European Union is incapable to bring fiscal policy in their economic integration. So the policy of complete economic integration as of now seems a distant dream. The most important negative impact of complete economic integration is that a problem in one nation will act like a dynamo effect to the other members of the group. And this is the reason why nations are reluctant in order to bring fiscal policies in their economic integration. Let us now look into Now, let us understand the same with this diagram. As we can see, the level of integration and the complexities keeps on increasing as we move to one level to the other. The political union also shows the kind of political ideology. That means all the members in the group will have similar ideologies. Maybe they all are part of a same democratic process, or they are part of the same communism, or they are part of the same socialism and others. And this shows that there is a high degree of complexities and level of integration. As of now, what we are observing is that nations have moved to the best association to economic union. The best example is your European Union with their common currency euro. Now let us look into what free trade agreement India has actually signed by now. From this graph you can easily see that India's economic integration started before 1970s. It kept on increasing till 1991. However, in between these 20 years, you can see that India has only signed 4 free trade agreements, in which 3 were actually part of multilateral deals and only one was there where India has signed a bilateral agreement. After 1991, that is liberalization, privatization and globalization policy, India has signed number of free trade agreement, and most importantly being the bilateral free trade agreements. We have nations like Mongolia, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Chile, Korea, Japan and many others. However, it doesn't mean that groups were not there. We have Mercosur group, we have SAFTA, we have SAARC grouping, we have nations, we have groupings such as ASEAN with which India has signed free trade agreement. Now, given this discussion and important information, let us look into an important prelims related MCQ. Now, read this question carefully and answer in the comment box. With this, now we will move to the question of the day.
Now we come to the last part of today's Daily News Simplified, that is question of the day. The answer to yesterday's question of the day is option B. That is, both Sri Lanka and Mauritius are part of Colombo Security Conclave, whereas Bangladesh is not. Today's question of the day says that which of the following nuclear reactors is used in India for the production of nuclear energy. You have 3 options, being pressurized heavy water reactor, boiling water reactor and water energetic reactor. So identify the correct answer and try to comment in the comment box. That's all for today's Daily News Simplify. Thank you.